And the other main thing that seems to result from minimum wage, ironically enough, is an increase in efficiency because workers shift from less productive to more productive firms. Yeah.
Okay. Chris Farley.
Thank you! Now, what we've seen here, folks, unfortunately, is with whatever we implement, we're going to be, unfortunately, 6 one hand, half dozen in the other, robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're going to add a few jobs here, add a little wage here, subtract a few jobs there. So what you need to do, folks, the thing that will actually help improve your life, advocate for sound money, increase your own purchasing power, fuck over the big guy. They're the ones that are going to have to pay the cost. You are going to see an increase in your purchasing power. Step on out into the beautiful sunlight of freedom. It's gorgeous out here.
Wonderful. I'm happy I invested in all that silver jewelry. Now we're going to go into the last topic, which is about cancel culture. This is back cancel culture and the specter around it. It could be about the Dr. Seuss thing. It could be about the recent thing with Eminem, or a wider topic about the conversation around cancel culture. Of course, we don't have time for intros, but I know that Dronetek was really interested in talking about this topic in particular, so I think I'm going to give it to him first.
Well, I think it's... yeah, I guess I got a lot to say about it. First of all, it's way... I mean, I think we all agree it's way bigger than just the Dr. Seuss books and all that. I don't know if you guys agree or not, but it seems to be part of a larger pattern of general widespread censorship, just basically shutting down of all dissent across the board, and that's not generally something the good guys are doing. And I'm just wondering what your rationalization is for that.
Can we just clarify the Dr. Seuss situation? His estate voluntarily chose to take 6 books out of rotation. I'm not sure what they did because
after having.
Why are they doing that? They're being pressured.
Wait. I thought you guys liked the free market. This is a private. This is a private estate responding to the demands of the free market.
Responding to threats from a vocal minority.
Responding to what the market is telling them in evaluating
I don't like what the
impact on their business. You know what the best part? About the Dr. Seuss situation is too? Since self-canceling and removing 6 books from circulation, the sales for all Dr. Seuss books has skyrocketed. So they are quite literally profiting off of self-canceling. And if that's not capitalism and the beauty of it, I don't know what you people want.
Now, if I may, I would like to just put this as a little aside. When people are worried about things being unavailable and people now suddenly can't get their hands on something, this is one of the hallmarks of actual English liberty, where it's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is also the right of the audience to listen and to hear and to be exposed. And anytime you limit yourself or limit the speech of another, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action because now you are not exposed to a new idea. Okay. So that's one of the great dangers of this cancel culture that we face ourselves. And when we're talking about what's going to happen in the future, all of us, every one of us hope that wiser people in the future will forgive us our sins and failings, as we're going to forgive those who came before us who were imperfect people yet still achieved. And if any of you on this panel think that you're cancel free, the fucking future generations will damn you because you carry this thing, a cell phone, a computer that has coltan in it and other conflict minerals. Do you know the untold suffering that has to go down for you to have this little creature comfort? Oh, but we had to live in the world that we lived in. So did the people that came before us. And that is the danger of this cancel culture. And
if I could pose a potentially useless hypothetical. You're this champion of free speech, right? You shouldn't close yourself off to ideas. We should never.
I can't wait to hear this.
On that kind of things. If someone walks into Starbucks and starts spouting off white nationalist rhetoric, in the lobby, right? They're echoing Nazi rhetoric. They're wearing Nazi regalia. They're talking about white supremacy. They're asshole, right? Do you not think that Starbucks, as a private company, it would be in their interest to make sure that that person isn't allowed to be in their...
Or any crazy person spouting insane bullshit, which happens on a regular basis, which isn't what we're talking about and is a complete deflection from what I asked, which was the widespread... What's happening right now is big tech is acting at the behest of big government, to silence opposition they don't like, and you guys are cool with that because it's being used to get the ends that you want. So explain that.
So as someone who worked in big tech, I can answer.
I'm an IT guy.
Here's the thing.
I'm not a complete.
So I'll be transparent. Like I used to work for Google, and here's the thing. Like I think it's absolutely valid to critique and question the impact that big tech has on discourse, on other things. But this framing is so disingenuous. There are plenty of critiques. If I will let you know in just a minute. But yeah, like it just seems so misplaced because the way that we think of cancel culture or what it's been labeled as right now seems to me like it's more consequences culture. Because here's the thing, free speech, no, because here's the thing, free speech is something that is protected where you are protected from government retaliation. However, if a private company chooses and sees exactly, like if a private company sees that your speech or your actions or anything are a threat to their profit making, and if it's not, obviously there are protected categories, but like that, they have every right to discontinue it or to terminate an employee or whatever. And as someone who's a fan of the free market, I'm really shocked that that's not something you support.
Yeah, Maddie you can support the free market and still criticize culture.
Maddie pretty much stole everything I was just about to say. The thing is, it's okay. The thing is, it's a private corporation, and they have a TOS. So the reason you're like a lot of
which is very nebulous and used to justify.
The reason a lot of right wingers are getting deplatformed and the like isn't that there's some big conspiracy to shut them down. It's that they don't know how to not violate TOS. It's because they're too dumb fuck to be dog whistly enough that they don't get like yeeted.
Well, that's very convenient for you and your agenda.
It's actually very convenient for me, so I don't have to listen to you guys bullshit.
And you can just broadly judge all speech that's inconvenient to your agenda
you make yourself a prisoner of your own action.
Did Trump try to cancel Nike at one point?
Let's do a moment.
People have a choice to buy or
give me a moment.
There's a big difference. How can you not see that? Like I really wonder.
And everyone interrupts me.
Okay, so please, everybody. I know this topic is getting heated right off the bat, but let's try to do this in an orderly fashion. I have LU tried to talk earlier, but was stopped. So I want LU to go. Then I'm gonna go to Dronetek because he was trying to respond, and then we're gonna go to Hutch. Okay, so we're gonna go in that order. Sound good? Wonderful.
Okay, I think we're kind of talking about a few different issues. They might be kind of related, but I think we should still try to focus on one thing at a time here. Started with Dr. Seuss. Now, I don't think that's really a cancel culture thing. I think the issue there, just for some background, which you haven't really provided, there are some Dr. Seuss books, and it was found that some of them have some like kind of, images that you wouldn't put in a children's book today. They're a bit un-PC. And I'll admit that like some of them are like something should be done about that. I question whether I don't think they're intentionally racist, but they're adhering to sort of social norms of a bygone era. So what should we do about that? I'm uncomfortable with those books being taken out of publication entirely. If people want to stop reading those books to their kids for that reason, or we want to like change the images in the book to sort of modernize them a little bit, that's more reasonable. But having them, it seems weird to me that they had to be taken out of public. You can't even buy those books anymore. And that's a bit scary to me and seems completely unnecessary. So does anybody disagree with that? Like, shouldn't we at least be able to buy those books as adults?
We should be able to buy Mein Kampf at the store?
Tiffany, when I talk, nobody talks. So I'm going to, for the sake of chat, read what was in some of these books, because like just talking about racist imagery without like knowing what racist. Does anybody object to me like just saying what was in it? Okay, well I'm gonna read them quickly.
Explicitly racist. Sorry.
An Asian person is portrayed wearing a conical hat, holding chopsticks and eating from a bowl. If I ran a zoo, it includes a drawing of two barefooted African men wearing what appear to be grass skirts with their hair tied above their heads. There's two. There's a few others, but there's two quickly.
Explain to me what's wrong there.
Do you think that's not racist?
I love black people. I have no problem with. I love black people. I have no problem with black people.
That has nothing
Why
to
is
do
that
with
racist?
whether or not this is racist.
No, it does. Because that's what you're going to come at me with. So I'm just telling you, explain to me what's the problem there. That's all I asked you. Not to call me a racist, which you're going to do. Tell me what's wrong.
I'm not calling you a racist. I'm asking
Somebody in
you
chat
if
could
you
send me the
genuinely
image of
believe that that is not racist, that depiction of an Asian man
If you could send it to me, Elio, I appreciate that.
racist.
So this is one of the pages. This is one of the pages from McElligot's pool that is supposedly going to get this book marked off. Some fish from the tropics, all sunburned and hot, might decide to swim up. Well, they might they? Racing up north for a chance to get cool. Full steam ahead for McElligot's pool. This is why book is getting banned, because there's a gentleman sitting on an island. Looks like he's drinking like a martini or something, but he's wearing at the time racially. I don't even know what the right term is to use anymore, because I'm afraid I'll get you banned, Dylan. So that's why this page is getting banned.
I think it was more than that. What was the name of that book?
Yeah,
McElligot's Pool. I can read the other one too if you want.
I just want to ask you guys something. Are you guys in the Mystery Science Theater 3000? Have you ever seen that?
I'm just gonna say that I'm looking at the images that was just sent to me by LU, and I don't know if I can show these on Twitch. Actually, can I? Am I allowed? Like these are.
Twitch might be tough, but
I don't know.
Discord you could.
Just lean on the safe side.
I'm gonna put it in the Discord, and I'll link it in chat. But just to be safe, I will not be showing it on stream. I'll probably leave a link to it for all the YouTube viewers. Okay.
So for another page from McElligot's Pool, this is a man that's in Tibet. He's got a pointy red and white striped hat with a really long beard. That's racist.
Well, so this image, like,
is it racist though?
I think the most charitable interpretation.
You looking at it?
Let me show it to me again. Show it to me again. I didn't see it.
I like how
look at I put it in the Discord chat if you want to look at it.
I like how Dylan said I probably shouldn't show these images, and the Turk's over here showing those images.
He's like, here.
Oh no, he's showing a different image than the one I'm talking about.
Okay,
but is it still appropriate though?
I guess.
Slip my glasses on for this one.
So
it's just an artistic interpretation of people. I mean, do you think that's really turning kids racist or something, like against black people? I mean, it just seems like now it's getting more.
Not that it's turning anything racist. We're just saying this thing is a racist depiction.
Look, here's my thing.
Can you differentiate?
Come on.
I mean, most of the time when you're reading these books to kids, you're reading the words, and they're not even listening to you, and they look at pictures. They don't even look at the pictures, man.
If young kids, if the most of what they're being exposed to, or if some of what they're being exposed to at a really young age exclusively plays into stereotypes and tropes, here's like the only thing that they're being exposed to, then they're going to have a really warped image of those people in their minds. This is not like a controversial.
Then you need to go talk to the Obamas and have them call out publicly that the Dr. Seuss thing was a bad.
Based on what you just said, then our society is being taught to violently hate white people. Will you agree with that?
No.
Absolutely.
No, of course not. No.
No, because it's not fucking true.
That picture is making people hate black people, but the daily drumbeat of white people being to blame for everything, and if you're not a white traitor, you're a white supremacist. No, that's cool.
Holy shit. Well, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We don't have the time.
Cultural norms, cultural
Okay, is that done? Okay, I'm back on screen now. Okay.
Language, cultural norms evolve over time. We can all agree that if we use the sort of language that was typically used in 1950, we would be rightfully admonished in 2021, correct?
Yes. Dumbo needs to be self-canceled by Walt Disney. They need to retract and take off the market the video and the movie.
Why is it every time left-wingers get power, they want to censor and shut up everybody? Answer that.
Hey, well, hold on. Should James Gunn have been fired from Disney? Should Kathy Griffin had lost her CNN spot on New Year's Eve?
James Gunn was.
Hold on.
How about the Dixie Chicks?
Hold on. Should the Dixie Chicks have been canceled in 2004 for
the Dixie Chicks weren't canceled for a second.
You act like this is something that is exclusive to the left.
It's different when you do it. I know.
Politics have been engaged in cancel culture for fucking decades. You want to talk about gangster rap music in the 90s?
I grew up on it. I grew up on it, so fuck off.
Okay, so who was trying to cancel that at the time?
The conservative right. I know.
This is not. So
why is it different when you do it? I'm not a I know you think everybody who disagrees with you is conservative. That doesn't mean I am. You keep trying to attach that to me.
I don't know.
You did kind of stumble on something that's been an.
It's a Marxist, actually, to be fair.
But you have stumbled onto something rather interesting, Hutch, that I've noticed that in the 90s, the folks who were humorless and couldn't take a joke were your over-the-top right-wing Christian conservatives. And now, weirdly enough, we've had this switch where it's now the far leftists who are unable to take a joke. And I even made the I even made the comment on the Tomfoolery show one time that it's really unfortunate. Punk rock just ain't the same. It's a bunch of pro-government bootlickers who can't take a joke.
Yeah, conservatives are the real punk rock now. Yes, this is such a
that's why so many famous comedians are notorious right-wingers.
All the spicy memes are right-wing.
There are a bunch. What are you talking about?
I said good ones.
All the dankest memes are all right-wing.
Comedy's subjective, isn't it? Really you all think that one chick is funny, the rape chick.
So
Gabriel,
I've got a question for the panel.
Who are you? What?
Should this book be banned?
My
big girl.
Nobody knows what's in that book. Like,
books like you do, Turk. So I don't know.
No, my boys read this book. I would love for them to learn how to go to the bathroom.
Turk, that is self-reading material.
I cannot wait for that.
Okay.
I know. I'm like, don't blame your sons for having that book. That's
to help him potty train.
I reused it. My
He's
daughter
sitting there in
used it to
diapers
learn,
right
and
now.
The boys read it.
This is the consumers of all stripes, left and right, exercise their voice and try to influence big companies to capitulate to their demands all the time. It is not something.
How does that excuse what's happening right now?
I'm not saying it. Well, I don't know what you mean by excuses. It depends on what we're talking about. But my main point directed at you is this is not something that's like a left-wing issue in this country.
Right now it is.
Okay, so who the fuck tried to boycott? Who the fuck tried to boycott Nike?
Josh Hawley.
Groups like BLM.
Josh Hawley's the senator from Missouri. Just tried to push to have credit card companies stop doing business with Pornhub. This is in the past year. He tried to cancel Pornhub. Trump also tried to cancel Nike at some point. Like today, Trump tried to cancel fucking Carl.
So your excuse for what you're doing is that somebody else did it.
So it's not. No, but what I'm saying is that this is not just simply like a left-wing issue. This is something that happens across the political.
That's all you're doing.
President was just
I am setting the
major platform. This is kind of an issue for the right. That's why.
And don't forget when they tried to boycott Keurig.
We're gonna slow this down.
That's why I'm not
a
Christian conservative. I'm not Christian.
We're gonna slow this down for a moment, okay? So, does anybody want to speak? Please raise your hand. We're just gonna slow it down for that process. Okay, Turk was the first, then KOE, then Tiff. Okay, so Turk, you can go first.
Yeah, so I'm pro free speech. I think people should be able to say what they should be able to say. My question is the slippery slope question. If today Dr. Seuss is getting 6 books censored, at what point should we expect Walt Disney to retract and erase stuff from their archives? At what point do we start to see major, probably cornerstones of Americana start to self-censor or get taken off the market because a radical mob whose mind changes by the day demands certain actions? At what point does it stop? What is safe content? Is this podcast safe content? At what point does this end?
It won't.
I mean, this podcast is clearly too hot for YouTube, too hot for any of the major platforms. But it is the essential question we all have to ask ourselves, unfortunately, with this cancel culture. And is there anybody in the audience or anybody within the sound of my voice that feels that they're not grown up enough to handle some rather unpopular works and some rather unpopular opinions and some things that might actually provoke you and some things that might actually be uncomfortable? Is there anybody in this audience that you could think of that you would like to decide for you what you are allowed to read and what you're allowed to know and who you would like to decide for you, whether you can decide whether you can hear something you might need to hear? Like I've
Honestly,
sorry.
Honestly, after the foreign policy discussion, I mean, I don't know.
Well, anyway.
Is there anybody on the panel who'd be against, for the people who are okay with these Dr. Seuss books being unpublished, wouldn't it be strictly better if they were continued to be published, but there was just some kind of disclaimer or notice somewhere that says, hey, by the way, there's some imagery that, some parents might not want to show their kids today. Just keep that in mind if you're a parent. Wouldn't that be a strictly better for society, I guess? If that happens instead, so that at least adults could then choose to buy these books and read them if they want. Like,
as long as people have at least access, that's perfect. Right? But what we're trying to do is pick a nominee to decide what's best for everybody to read, and everybody has very different tastes. And there is no one fit to decide for you or you or you or you or you out in the audience what is fit for you to read. That person does not exist. Nobody has the foreknowledge, and we have no idea what the negative consequences could be. And furthermore, you have to be suspect of the motives of anyone who would try to do so.
So one of the things that I like to think about in these contexts is what policy would y'all like changed? If you don't want to see books like this canceled, what law would you change and what would it do?
I don't think this is a legal issue. Like I think you have every right to not publish any book that you don't want to publish. I have no objection to that. But the reason that they unpublished these books is in response to a culture which would be very upset with them if they continued to publish it or implemented the solution that I proposed, probably. So, and that is what I don't like. I don't like that culture. And that's what I'm criticizing here. I'm not criticizing the law or proposing any change in the law.
What about culture that pressured establishments pre-civil rights to serve blacks and whites together?
I don't see how that's analogous to this at all.
Why not?
So
these are like
I think you can critique good.
This is just why is it good that we're not even able to buy these books, that adults are not even able to buy these books to see what's in them?
There's no real good reason.
I mean, all I was going to say is, like, if an adult was really dedicated to getting this, you can obtain these books on certain websites very easily.
I mean, you have to pirate them. That's kind of not.
You can go on Amazon.
Yeah, well, I mean, this seems like an argument for the elimination of
being
intellectual property, but that's outside the current context.
There's a never-ending cyclone of anxiety because we're trying to play whack-a-mole to try and
was anyone in here like reading Dr. Seuss books night and day and is just like really anxious that they're Dr. Seuss?
Never going to get rid of everyone's anxiety.
If it was your literature, you would have a completely different opinion. Have some self-awareness, dude.
Well, no, I was talking. One moment. Tiffany, you've been waiting for a while, so I want to throw it over to you.
Honestly, it's been going so long, I kind of forget what I was going to say, but I'll try. The point was that the Dr. Seuss books was stopped not just because like a small fringe of people who didn't agree with it pressured them to. It's the majority of people recognize that this is bad for business and this is not acceptable. That's why a lot of companies will have months dedicated to marginalized communities or LGBT people, because they have virtual signaling, but they know that there's a lot of people who support those movements and not a lot of people who support racist books. In regards to what the last username is saying, you can make that argument about a lot of stuff. Why can't you go down to the local Barnes & Noble and buy your copy of Mein Kampf on the rack? Why can't you why can't you Target? I don't think you can.
Look at all the anti-white books you can buy. They're all over.
On Kindle or paperback.
Wait, can you actually buy Mein Kampf?
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't.
That has a pretty broad.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
But
why
anti-white books are very mainstream.
Why can't you go down to Walmart and buy your discount Klan hood and tiki torches in the
Who gives
costume
a shit about
aisle?
tiki torches? Like,
No, the point is why can't you sell these things? And it's because they're not popular, and companies realize that. And if you really want these books that bad, you can get them, but that's not the point of not releasing these books. Times are changing, and if you can't change with them, that's your problem. Additionally, I like how people are complaining about cancel culture when literally during the Trump administration, my rights were under attack. They were trying to. I'm trans, and they wouldn't let me go into homeless shelters. I wasn't allowed to get served by certain healthcare providers, especially depending on what state you're in. There's a lot. I couldn't join the military. There's a lot of reasons I got attacked, and that affects my life way more than your goddamn Dr. Seuss books.
So when did this book get banned?
No, I disagree with you actually, because those Dr. Seuss books are just a symptom of the larger problem that we're seeing in, like last username said, in our culture. We used to be a culture of openness and free discussion. We could do this. We can't anymore. We can't even talk anymore.
It used to be a culture of openness. How do you think it felt to be like a black person or a gay person or a trans person like 50 years ago? We're more
50 years
open
ago?
now.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay,
I agree.
so
we can have that kind of moral progress and still have access to books that are, even if they're incompatible with those morals.
The thing is, you guys don't
those two things.
The thing
So
is,
last
you guys
week,
don't.
the reason that I focus on policy is because to me this seems like the market functioning, and so if you want the market to stop functioning,
it's the market being
idea is that
strong-armed.
we can't change the culture like on our own.
Yes,
so the question is
we
how?
can. What do you mean? Why not?
So you can take.
Okay, we're a bunch of Twitch streamers.
Culture changes.
Can I ask a question quick? Okay, so I heard a few times, like, some people think this is market functioning. I heard Dronetek say that this is strong-armed. So this is actually, I think, an interesting discussion actually from this, right? Is this the market functioning, or is it being manipulated by outside forces? Because is a boycott, for example, people would boycott the estate for selling these stuff. Would that be the market functioning? People just choosing not to buy products from this service or good?
Yeah.
That would be.
Restricting
People like to talk about the Dixie Chicks.
Is never
That was the
moving in
market.
the direction of freedom. Ever.
This happening
if you're restricting
isn't
people's access to
new, by the
information of any kind, you're less free by that much.
So, Code, do you therefore
nobody-
oppose
wait, wait,
intellectual
wait, give me a
property
second,
rights?
Give me a second. Drone, nobody heard what you said because like other people were talking for a second. Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying people kept bringing up the Dixie Chicks, but the huge difference there is that it had nothing to do with like mass media and things like that. It was just people deciding they didn't want to buy from Dixie Chicks, but they got huge anyway. So it's kind of like the Dr. Seuss thing.
It was absolutely.
But eBay and Amazon are refusing to sell those books.
It was 100% mass. The reason why it got so much coverage is because it got picked up in the media and then it caught fire like amongst conservative evangelical Christians.
I agree, but people just decided not to buy it.
Because of Fox News using their
People
24-hour
didn't stop
news
selling
cycle
it
to
because they were
disparage them.
afraid of backlash.
Nearly the boogeyman you think it is. I'm sorry.
How is that different? Afraid of backlash. How is that different than a publisher?
A lot of Republicans yelling.
I can't.
Too many people.
Wait. Okay, I didn't hear anything of what was just said because there was two people yelling at the same time. So let's do we'll go back to hand raising because we have 18 minutes left in the show. So I want to make sure everybody gets time to talk. So can people just raise their hand if they want to talk? I see multiple people raising their hand. Okay, it's going to be. I saw Turk raise it first, then Tiffany, then Hutch. Okay.
Yeah,
Turk,
so mine's going to be pretty quick. So basically what I would rather have happen here is me knowing how the society works right now. I would love to take my book, McElligot's Pool, and read it to my kids and go and say, hey guys, you know this picture here? This is not how there actually are in the world. I would love to teach inclusivity to my kids with a actual reference of how things used to be and how it was bad and how we can make it better going into the future. I don't need it to be stripped from the annals of history. I can teach my kids stuff is bad. I'm not an evil person.
Tiffany?
First off, before I get into what I was going to say, I agree, Tech. You can teach your kids what's right and what's wrong, but you don't need a Dr. Seuss book to do that. You should be able to do that with in a variety of different ways, not needing a book to reference. Secondly, it was in response to Dylan Burns in his question about whether boycotting is a viable response. At least, I don't think so on either the right or the left, especially the right. They tried boycotting Nike. Nike's sales went up. They tried boycotting Keurig. Their sales went up. And even a lot of leftists in pro-LGBTQ communities tried to boycott Chick-fil-A. Didn't happen. Chick-fil-A is more popular than ever. So I don't think boycotting is as viable as people make it out to be. You'd need a significant amount of the population to join in if you want to get anything done there.
Okay. Next is going to be Hutch, then Socialism Done Left.
I just want to throw out a pitch for the 3 albums by the Dixie Chicks called Home, Fly, and Wide Open Spaces. They make music worthy of angels. It's beautiful music, and they decided to speak out against George W. Bush because he was a fucking idiot.
By the way, isn't it no longer Dixie Chicks?
You guys love him now, I thought.
That's right.
I thought you guys loved him now.
For the record, sir, and again, you don't know me. I've always loved the Dixie Chicks. I have been consistent in
They're
my
called the
love for the
Chicks
Dixie
now.
Chicks.
They're now the Chicks.
They're called the Chicks.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I hate saying that though. God.
I
damn
know. It's not as
All right.
catchy.
The Chicks. They make beautiful music, and they spoke out against the president, and the right wing of this country fucking canceled them.
Well, that's pretty much all we get is speaking out against the right wing of this country. Don't you agree? No?
Absolutely. Take a look at the top 10 performing posts on Facebook any of the last like fucking 100 weeks, and you're going to see it dominated by right wingers. Right wingers have a space in this media. They like to pretend like they're persecuted, and they don't have a voice while writing an op-ed in the Washington Post about how conservatives don't have a voice in this country. It's such bullshit. Like
they're being demonized in the media every day in mainstream media.
The Washington Post.
Like the Dixie Chicks were demonized, and they make
No,
beautiful music.
they're
and
talking
everyone
about
should listen to
bombing
those
them
albums.
and deprogramming them and shit like that. Really?
I don't know
It's
what
not
that
at all
means.
the same. They're talking about doing this stuff to 75 million.
Literally exactly the same.
Okay,
There's no
I don't think so. We're talking about dehumanizing like 75 million Americans, talking about deprogramming them and literally
the
drone
lead singer-
striking them.
Sir, the lead singer of the Dixie
Sitting
Chicks
president
received
was
multiple
not
death
allowed
threats.
to communicate
She
with
received
voters.
multiple death threats from conservatives that were fucking incredulous.
I've
at the
received
idea
death
that a
threats.
Country music star
Who cares?
badmouthed George W. Bush, and somebody's got to stick up for her.
All right, I gotta throw it over to Socialism Done Left, and it's gonna be Maddie afterwards.
All I wanted to say here is that I think this conversation is really interesting because the suggestion that like certain firms that are like publishing books which are perceived as racist, the idea that they can't make a choice based on whether it be like forceful pushback activism, like free market, presumably these will all be features of the free market. People organizing to do like causes or parts of consumers doing things freely, presumably. So all these should be within the market perspective. So the question is simply, if you don't like this, if you want to change it, how should you go about opposing this? It's the same thing that people do on Twitter. Oh, well, Twitter will ban you. That's just the market. That's a firm doing so. If you think
saying
that's
just the market, like
that's it. So you need an alternative.
Terrible straw man, right? Like I think free markets are good. I do not think that free markets solve all problems, and that once there's a free market, it's impossible to complain about anything else.
Yeah, and so then you need state intervention. So the question is, what intervention do you want?
No,
do
you
you
don't need intervention. We can solve problems without taking away the free.
You know, honestly, when you look at
fallacy,
websites
right?
like
if
Google
we have a free
and
market
Twitter,
and there's still problems, then I guess we can't have a free market. No,
if I may,
don't have anything to do with the free market. We solve those problems in other ways. I think we can solve. I think this is a problem not of the lack of free markets. It's a problem with culture. The problem is that the market is, these people are responding to the market pressure, and the market pressure is coming from a culture that I don't think is healthy. And I think we could change, and I'm trying to change that by encouraging people like, don't freak out if a book exists that has stuff you don't like in it. We should have access to information, even if you think it's bad.
Okay, KOE, then Maddie, because KOE, I'll give you the chance because you've been trying to get in for a little bit, okay?
Okay, I was just about to say that if we're going to really look at companies like Google and Twitter, and you look at the massive amounts of taxpayer-subsidized bandwidth that they consume in a single day just to keep themselves going, it is a little cute to call them purely free market. Just because that was the one little point I wanted to throw in there. That, they can't even go a single day without the massive amount of taxpayer-subsidized bandwidth that they consume from day to day. So it is just a little cute to call them strictly free market, but just a little something out. I'm a farmer, just planting seeds in the minds of all of you beautiful people.
Throw it over to Maddie.
Yeah. So when here's what I think is happening, and here's why cancel culture is all of a sudden made its way to the front of headlines to make its way to the 24-hour news cycle on Fox News. It's interesting that they went all in on it now that Trump is out of office, and all of a sudden this is what they've deemed the most important that the public needs to know about. And cancel culture really is just this boogeyman that people have come up with to explain away bad behavior, and then when people in power experience consequences. So I almost like to think of it as consequence culture. Because when you make a mistake, and we all do, by the way, there should be consequences. Now, there's debate over what those consequences should be. But like this isn't like, and it's just, it blows my mind. And I mean, I get it. The GOP had a lot of time to fill with the recent CPAC conference. So of course they had to find new things to get their geriatric audience outraged about. And it just, it feels like so convenient that these things happen all of a sudden when there are so many other things that are far more important. And it's interesting, again, that a dead man's family's trust, who chose to remove his books out of circulation, these aren't even, it's not Cat in the Hat. It's not like his more popular works either. It's not like they're removing Dr. Seuss entirely. They just made the decision to remove some problematic books, which is well within their rights. So I just find it interesting that this specifically
is anybody denying that it's within their rights?
But what's fueling it?
So there is rumors around that the Cat in the Hat is actually someone that's playing blackface. So yeah, I wouldn't expect that in a couple of years that this also could be banned because it depicts someone.
He's awful white.
So last username.
Who whispered that to you?
It's on the internet. It's not true.
What site is it on?
I don't know. Google it. That's a good defense.
www.imright.com, the most reliable website.
The desire to censor things has been near universal. It's not like a new thing, and I have little to reason to believe that.
What do you mean near universal?
And in the past, like you
mean this can't
any time period.
I don't think that's true.
Look at literally any time period, and you'll find people trying to censor the writings of their opponents. It goes back to fucking Google. Right. There were whole wars about
this.
So
first of all, your suggestion that this has never changed ever, I find unlikely. Second of all, just because it's been around a long time, does that mean it's a good thing?
No, the argument is that it's somewhat immalleable about human nature is the argument. I'm literally
Why is it immalleable?
Because it seems like it's literally all societies that people want to censor things they don't like. So the question is, if there's something immalleable about
why can we buy Mein Kampf? Like at some point it was decided in history that we should be able to buy that book, even though there's like no debate that it has some horrendously dangerous stuff in it.
He was one of the most consequential.
But there was a culture that said that book, that we should be able to buy that book.
He was one of the most.
You need to be able to study historical.
That culture seems to have changed. I think if Mein Kampf was published today, it wouldn't be published. It would be unpublished the way that Dr. Seuss was.
Published.
And Dr. Seuss's books have led a lot of children to happiness and learning a lot of family values that prop up the attitudes of younger children.
One moment. Hutch has been trying to say something over and over. Hutch?
No, after saying, Hutch, please. The Mein Kampf issue, like this, we're talking about one of the most impactful and consequential historical leaders in the history of the world. That is a perfectly plausible reason why people would have access to his personal writings while he was in prison or whatever.
Okay. Can I say something real quick? So
kind of consequential too, I guess.
So,
not as much, but
not as much.
I keep saying like we're hung up on this book, and it's
Dr. Seuss. Everybody knows him. Like, why shouldn't? I think people are curious to see the things that he did in the past that are controversial.
Let me take this baton and pass it to Drone. Okay.
No, I just want to say like there are. I've been saying this over and over. It's bigger than the books, but look at the monuments. Okay, we had these Confederate monuments that were like, oh yeah, it seems like an obvious thing. Yeah, let's take these down. There's these horrible symbols and let's take them down. Fine. And Trump actually said, if you guys remember, during that infamous Charlottesville press conference, he said that next will be Thomas Jefferson in Washington. And he made an argument. And if you guys remember, the media went off on him at the time and they said, oh, you're crazy. You need to open a history book. Hold on, let me finish. And Acosta did a couple pieces where he's like, the president, this is white supremacist lingo to compare the Confederate statues to Washington and Jefferson, and he needs to open a history book. Guess what? Trump was right, because that's exactly the next target, and Rushmore's a target, and eventually the American flag will be the target. All of America will be the target. So this is an obvious slope. It's a real slippery slope that we were really on. How do you guys defend it?
Personal one. If you don't want me to, I am the host, so I'm not supposed to. But can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So, would you say that the Mount Rushmore situation is a little different, since it has to do with native land and tribes who think that is disputed with the federal government? It's a little different than just like cancel culture.
It's just no. I'm sorry. It's not because it's just part of erasing American culture and replacing it with something. And the people that are driving this are all Marxists and communists. So what are they replacing it with? I don't know.
Isn't that what we did to the native mountain that was there before? Which was
it is. Well, no, I think I'm not 100% on the history of that site, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, in a sense we did. But if we acknowledge that that's wrong, why would we do it again?
To me, it's destroying art. You can't do that. You can't destroy art like that. This is our connection to our history and our past, whether it was right or wrong. There's giant statues made of very precious stones of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. A lot of assholes, but we keep the statues nonetheless because that is how the art of the day was created. And I couldn't.
Yeah, what's ISIS do? They blow shit up.
I gotta go to the list because we have 6 minutes left.
Fair enough.
Then SDL, then Tiff.
Yeah, this is quick. So the whole reason why Dr. Seuss is in the news right now is because he was not being showcased in the Read Across America anymore, which happens to be held on March 2nd, which is his birthday. And the reason why they have the Read Across America Day is it encourages kids to embrace books and foster a love of reading. That's why people have celebrated Dr. Seuss. That's why President Obama and his First Lady liked reading their books, because there are a lot of good values that Dr. Seuss has brought to the world. Yeah, people can misinterpret some of the stuff in his pages, but everything could be misinterpreted given enough time.
Next is going to be SDL.
Yeah, I mean, I think this conversation is like, as usual with most culture war conversations, just utterly unproductive. We're talking about things which are very hard to quantify, hard to prove have any real world impact. It's hard to actually care about any of this whatsoever. That's why I keep trying to pivot towards like policy or other issues that are broader. Like, should there be intellectual property? Should anyone be able to access these books? If you want to talk about like general cancellations and general like how the market functions, then talk about those. Don't talk about fucking Dr. Seuss, and don't talk about like Marxists destroying like our culture by eliminating like a statue or something.
It's all part of the same thing.
Yes, they could be.
It absolutely is. Come on my channel, let's argue. Good.
So they could be useful examples.
SDL, do you think policy is the only thing
they don't get the broader
discussing?
They make it pretty much worthless. Yeah.
Like, do you think there are some problems that are best solved culturally by just changing social norms?
You like to hop in right after last when it's always my turn. So, all right, I just wanted to build off what sorry.
Well, I will say that when somebody goes, that doesn't mean it's like perfectly. Or if somebody wants to respond to a statement, they can. But he said it just generally needs to move in this order. So let's use name can if he really wants to quickly.
Tiff, can I just do a brief response to last? Yes.
Sure, you can do it, and then we'll go to Tiffany.
Sure. So last, as you say, some issues are social. I certainly agree that some issues are social. The question is, what can we change? And so culture, I'm suggesting here, is probably pretty malleable, because the desire to censor things, the desire to have books published which you don't agree with, have those like cut down. This has existed for all of history. It doesn't seem clear to me that you can end those just by like changing culture or to make it more virtuous or something, because these things existed 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 50, 1,000, a million years ago. I'm sure they existed. It's very hard to think that we can just eliminate them because we make the right culture.
It's not hard to think at all. I can easily imagine that. I don't understand. Like,
it's just because you imagine it doesn't mean it's feasible to change.
I know it. It's like, what?
We've changed so much.
Oh, we just let it happen.
I'm taking the baton. I'm handing it over to Tiffany now. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. There are a few things I want to say. First, I want to build off what Sock Done Left said earlier, in that when you sign up to any social media platform, be it Facebook or Twitter, whatever, you have to read and agree to their TOS. If you break TOS and you suffer the consequences, that is on you. So that if you don't like it, you have to take it up with them. Secondly, I do like how the right wing always tries to play the victim, where they're getting way more crap than the left is right now. We get 6 books from Dr. Seuss taken away. They get a majority in the Supreme Court. We get some statues of traitors to America taken down. They get tax cuts for the rich. Their priorities are skewed.
Base?
Alrighty. Well,
is everything okay? Continue.
I think that's it.
Good.
I would honestly say that.
Go into closing statements, sir.
Well, Turk, you want to be starting closing statements because we got to wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah, it's just like, the company has every right to self-censor their own books. They've gone through their own procedures to take the stuff down. The only problem I have is that just because something's unpopular today doesn't mean that goalpost is going to shift in the future. what was not offensive, like this bathroom book, it's all white people in it. It's a loving family. They're trying to teach this girl to go to the bathroom. When is that going to be deemed offensive? Because the majority of underprivileged people don't have a nuclear family. They're not the right color. Maybe we need to have a double dads in the book instead. When are we going to start changing everything across the board? Because we can't just be selective on how we're enforcing this outrage. We need to be all across America expecting these kind of things. So I demand everyone that's in favor of Dr. Seuss self-censoring, I want them to go to Disney, tell them to get rid of Dumbo, get rid of Aladdin, get rid of all sorts of different types of stuff. And it's got to be universal, guys. You can't just selectively censor people.
If you love Orwell, it's becoming real. It is real right now. Yeah. He thinks it's hilarious because it's being done in his favor. If it was being done against him, this dude would be raging.
Orwell warned about government totalitarianism, for Christ's sake.
Past was erased.
Everybody. Okay. Everybody, it was closing statements that we started with. It wasn't. We're not back to open forum, okay? That's not how this works. So, Drone, do you want to do your ending statements?
No, I have nothing smart to add at all to this, but I did have fun, and I appreciate you guys inviting me, Dylan, and meeting all of you. It was fun.
Yeah, wonderful. We're going to move it over to last username.
Yeah, so I think this conversation has been like derailing all over the place. I think this is really about a culture of censorship. It's not about law. It's not about rights. It's about if you don't like the content of a book, there's something wrong with it. Let's say there's something really is wrong with it. Should it be? Would you like it to cease to exist, or would you just like it to, I don't know, put a disclaimer on it or something like that? Should we have access to information like that? I think the answer is pretty obviously yes. I don't see why you would want information to just be removed from existence, have books just removed from existence. That's a very strange attitude. I don't think first of all, it's not a universal attitude. Lots of people disagree with that now. It's definitely a malleable attitude. It's something that's changed throughout history and across different cultures. And it's something we can easily change in the future. And the suggestion that, people just censor, that's what people are going to do, can't do anything about that, is just so absurd. Of course we can change that, especially coming from a socialist who are usually quite optimistic about the ability of culture and norms to change. The whole reason these books are problematic now is because norms changed, right? That's what made the things that were acceptable back then not acceptable now. Why can't we change the norm of we'd rather see books just sort of properly labeled or disclaimed rather than cease to exist? That, of course, we can change that.
Okay, next is going to be KOE.
Well, thank you, one and all, for joining us for this amazing evening on Dylan Burns TV. Before I start getting into who I am and what I do, one closing statement I'd like to say to you folks. When Dr. Robert Johnson, the compiler of the first great English dictionary, at one point met with the ladies of London after he had done so, and they said to him, Dr. Johnson, we are pleased to see that you did not include any unfit or obscene words in your dictionary. And he said, ladies, I congratulate you on being able to look that up. And for those who do get that joke, and I'm pleased to see that about 10% of you can, you get the idea of you must always be suspect of the motives of those who are determined to be offended, of those who will go through a treasure trove of English in search of filthy words in order to just act as though they are offended and be appalled. You always have to be suspect of those motives, folks. Always remember that. But as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, thank you for joining us this evening on Dylan Burns TV, the Hippy Dippy Podcast. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, Phil KOE. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, also the Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast, and Big Bucket and Liar. I'm so sorry. And I make occasional guest star appearances on the Tomfoolery Show, Dad's Worldwide, and Yanked Up Podcast. Folks, I love every last one of you. Raise a glass to yourself. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. I love you all, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Who doesn't love KOE? We're going to throw it over to SDL.
Sure. So I think that human norms can change. The question is how much. I point to like the vast majority of human history across enormous changes in like economic systems, like social norms, and it always seems like people want to reduce the power of those they disagree with. The question is, how can you mitigate that? The reason that I focus on policy is because we can actually change policy here. We can reduce the impact of intellectual property rights on the ability to publish. If these books were public domain, it wouldn't matter if the publisher wanted to stop publishing them, because you can just download the goddamn PDF, as you can if you just look it up. Similarly, if you moved towards more of a like publicly funded sort of like I like the idea of like media vouchers sort of approach, where there is like public funding of these sorts of things rather than leaving it entirely up to the market. Then a lot of these issues also are mitigated. There's a whole lot of evidence that public funding of media enormously improves the quality of media in general. Leaving the control of information up to just to the market, just to these cultural norms, is not a productive or efficient way to run society. There's literally studies that like NPR, PBS, and in general, publicly funded media around the world is consistently the highest trusted and the most informative. And there's a reason for that. It's because they aren't motivated by profit. They're motivated by, in short, trying to inform people. This is an argument, I think, for a diverse and broad set of public funding and reduction of intellectual property rights.
Okay, next is going to be Tiffany Starr.
I wasn't really prepared for this topic because I didn't intend for us to make it this far. I thought we were just going to do the first three. That's how it's usually gone. All I have to say is I love how the right talks about cultural censorship when it's primarily the right fighting against marginalized communities, including women's rights, LGBT rights, and brown people. Turk said, will they add 2 dads to his book as if that would erase his culture? What's the problem with that? Drone is upset they pulled down Confederate statues, even though Confederates literally fought against America.
I don't care about the Confederates.
KOE, I don't know what the hell KOE was talking about. I know he likes silver. The point is, it seems like a lot of their ire doesn't stem from us like taking away their culture, but us implementing ours.
I resemble that remark.
I don't care. Just so we're clear, I don't care about the Confederate monuments. It's about the overall trend. That's what I care about.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the things I love about this country is when you think about just how far we have progressed, and especially in the last 20 years, the internet is something that is making this issue much more relevant and potent than it was just 30 years ago or 40 years ago. The reason why we're having so many of these discussions is because we're all talking. But I, for one, really love the fact that we don't use the same kind of language that we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It indicates that we culturally are moving forward. That's not a bad thing, but there's bound to be growing pains while that's happening at an accelerated rate because of things like social media that spread ideas and arguments a lot faster than they did before. And I just want to throw one final pitch out there. The Chicks, Home, Fly, and Wide Open Spaces are incredible albums. You should listen to them. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Maddie.
Hooray. Yeah, I mean, overall, like, this was a super fun panel to be a part of. As far as cancel culture is concerned, I feel like that term has been weaponized by the right as a distraction tactic.
They
largely.
seized on it.
This is my statement, sir. And like the Dr. Seuss debacle is a case study in the right-wing grievance industry that reframes normal age-old processes like removing books from circulation as some sort of sinister suppression. And they, I mean, listen, 24 hours of a news cycle on Fox News ain't going to fill itself. So I appreciate the hustle. I don't love it, but I appreciate it. And I think this is something that we're seeing being brought to the surface again, because it's now all of a sudden people who are in power being held accountable for their actions versus how it's historically happened, where people in power are the ones that are, quote, canceling those who dissent from them. And all of a sudden, now that you see any sort of opinion counter to the powers that be, and people using their collective power and influence to call them out on it, all of a sudden that makes it a bad thing. So I agree with Hutch that I think I'm glad that we don't use the same language from 30 years ago. It's encouraging to see that our society is moving forward in that way. And I hope to see more of it. And I mean, for me at least, I always look for opportunities to make sure that I'm being more inclusive, that my language is always evolving, so that I'm not, I can be part of the solution, not the problem. So that's what I have to say on this. But otherwise, again, Dylan, thank you so much for having me on here. I had a really good time, and this was fantastic. Oh, and KOE is doing prop comedy. So
I'm just putting KOE Nation on YouTube. I am never above some shameless self-promotion. I am so
Wonderful.
Like, never above.
I will, of course, in the YouTube video, everybody's stuff will be linked below if you want to check them out. And I want to thank everybody for coming on. It was a blast. I'm really happy with this roundtable, even if I raged at some parts for personal restraint. I think this was a really good roundtable. I think it was a good mix of entertainment, policy discussion, etc. Thank you so much for everybody coming on. I'm gonna head out. You're all free to stay in here to chat if you want to, for whatever reason. You all have a blessed day, okay?
Thanks for inviting me, Dylan. I had fun.
Later, Dylan. Thanks for having
Have a
me.
nice evening, Dylan.
all right.
Have a nice evening, all of y'all. I need to get to bed.
Hey, same with all of you guys. I am dead tired. Night. It was
I
fun.
need some dinner.
Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe and all that.
Bye,
Same
guys.
You
to you all.
too. Pleasure meeting all y'all. This was
You
fun.
too.
Oh wait, if Hutch is still here, feel free to play Call of Duty with me sometime.